What's up, everybody? This is Sleep from FFXIV and things, and this is How to MMORPG. This series is just basically for if you're just getting into MMO and you want a little bit more information, and maybe your friends invited you to play or Guild Wars or Final Fantasy 14, or you've been interested in getting into them yourself. But you wanted a little bit more information. That's basically what this series is for. Last episode we went over talking about equipment and how it affects your character and why it's important and things like that, and how to read the item tips. But this episode we're going to talk about combat, just the basics of combat. So in Final Fantasy 14, we're in Central Thanalan, and you can see that this is definitely one of the starting areas. You can see a bunch of level 1 monsters out here, level 1 enemies. And so if I wanted to initiate combat with something in an MMORPG, generally I'm going to have to select it. In order to do that on PC, you have a couple different options. You can just use your mouse and click on a target, and that will select it. And pretty much selecting a target, what it does is it just lets your character know that this is what you want to focus on. If you use an ability or anything like that, this is what you want to use it on. So if I want to use Boot Shine here, well, this is what I'll use it on. There are other methods of targeting on PC, for Final Fantasy 14 at least, and generally for other MMOs. You usually can hit Tab, and that will actually cycle through your targets, any available target within the view, and that's always good, especially if targets are bunched up and you're trying to select a specific one and they're really close together, like in a dungeon or something like that, and you're having a hard time, picking the right one. You can just hit Tab and cycle through, usually faster than you'll be able to pick the specific one and click it. PS4, which is what we're playing on with control, have a couple different options as well. You can hit X to select the target within your focus, within your view. That will just automatically select that target. Also, you can use Pad, which is the little arrow buttons to the top left of your left stick, which would be your move stick. You can use left or right on the D-pad to do what we call a soft target, and we'll talk about, or what I call a soft target, and we'll talk about that later on. But it allows you to say, okay, which one do I want? And then if you want to fully select that target, you can hit X and it will select that target for you. And you can switch around as you see fit. Now, the other or third way of selecting targets in Final Fantasy 14 at least, which we'll talk about because that's mostly what we're playing, is you can hold R2 or L2 and then use L1 and R1 to cycle through targets, very much like Tab on the PC, which again is very nice for times where you need to switch to a target very quickly, so you don't have to deselect the target and try and target the next target. So you can switch through targets using that, and you can switch very quickly, which is nice and definitely helpful. And you can see that we did deselect on PC. I would imagine that it's escape, and it is. So if you have a target and you don't want, and that's not the target that you want, you can just hit escape, and that will deselect that target. On PS4, all you have to do is hit circle, and it will deselect the target for you. So targeting is very important to being able to be active in combat. In order to interact with anything, you're going to have to select it. So if you want to use a skill or anything like that, you just have to select it and say I want to use X ability. Now Now, as far as combat goes, or attacking goes, you'll have generally two forms of attack. You'll have what's known as an auto attack, which is just something that your character will do innately. It's nothing that you have to worry about or anything like that, or have to actually take part in. Once you activate it, it will just continue on. So you can see in Final Fantasy XIV, I'm not sure how it would work on PC. You may have to right-click as if you were trying to activate an item or something like that in the game world. But for PS4, all I have to do is walk up to this marmot and hit X after selecting it, and you'll see that Sig just starts punching this guy. And this is what we call an auto attack. It's not a skill, doesn't take a skill, it's nothing fancy, he's just punching and kicking. And you can see that we're doing damage to the marmot. You can see we're doing 6 damage there, and we did 6 damage the time before, and we did 5 damage there. So the damage generally is going to vary, and it's going to be based on what weapons you have equipped and what gear you have equipped and where your stats are. But it's generally not going to do that much damage. It's enough to be something that you want to do if you can, but it's not something that you really have to worry about too much. And generally when you start off in an MMO, when you first load in, you'll probably have a button for auto attack. So if we wanted to keep that, if we wanted to use that, we could just walk over, and instead of pressing X or right clicking, we could just hit the auto attack button and Sig will start auto attacking. But what I will say is that generally auto attacks are going to be initiated upon using an ability already. As soon as you start attacking something, either by using an ability or by activating them, you'll start auto attacking. The next form of attacks are going to be your skills. And the first thing we'll say is read everything. And again, always, this is best advice I can give. Read everything. That will let you know what your skills do, and when to suggestions on when to use them and things like that, how to use them effectively. So you can see on this tooltip for this ability, we see at the top it says Boot Shine, which is the name of the ability. Underneath that, we can see that it says weapon skill, so that lets us know that this is a weapon skill. It's a skill we use with our weapons. To the right of that, you can see that it says range, and it says 3 yalms or yards, but yalms for Final Fantasy XIV. And that just lets us know the distance at which we can use this ability. Also in Final Fantasy XIV, you can see that here we see that this number down here, which was blue, is now red. That lets us know that we can't use that ability. It lets us know that the target's not in range. But if we move closer, you can see that it goes blue. So this right here is the threshold. This is the range at which we can use that ability. So let's go back here. So there's generally as well as to the range. Generally, it's usually going to be that the icon is grayed out and you can't use it, but as soon as you get within range, the icon will light up and let you know, okay, you're in range and you can use it. So knowing the measurements of distance between you and an enemy is not something you usually are going to have to worry too much about. Let's see here. Now next to that, you can see that it says radius 0 yards. So that means that it's not going to have any kind of effect on anything around you or the target. It's only going to affect that target, so it doesn't have an area of effect or anything like that. Underneath that, you can see it says cast instant. And cast is just basically the cast time, or how long it takes for the ability to activate. You can see underneath cast that it says instant, so that means that immediately upon pressing the button, or pressing the button for the ability, it's going to activate and it's going to be used. We don't have to wait any period of time or anything like that. It's just going to be instant. To the right of that, you can see that it says recast. And you see it says 2.5 seconds. So that means that after using this ability, in order to reuse it, we're going to have to wait 2.5 seconds. So that just lets us know how long we have between uses. And that's always a good thing to know for sure. And there are going to be ways to cut that time down as well later on, generally. You can see that to the right of that it says TP cost. In Final Fantasy XIV we have two different types of resources. We have TP, which you can see here is indicated by this orange bar, and you see that we have 1,000 TP. That number doesn't change that I've seen, so you won't have to worry about that too much. But every time we use this ability, it's going to use a little bit of our TP. It's going to use 60 of our TP. When you're first starting off, you're usually not going to have to worry too much about resource management unless you're a caster. But later on in the game, as some of the fights get longer and you're attacking faster, the faster you attack, the more times you're using the ability, the faster you're burning through resources. Generally, your resources will have an innate regenerative ability, so over time they're going to go back. But the faster you get at using them and the longer the fights go on, you may end up running out of resources. But there's always generally going to be some kind of ability that you can use, or an ability someone else can use on you, or an item that you can use to refresh your resources. So you just want to keep your eye out for those as time progresses, especially if you start find you're having problems with your resources, managing your resources. Underneath that, you can see that it says we start getting into the skills description. It says underneath that it delivers an attack with a potency of 150. So that just basically tells us what this ability's damage potential is. Potency is a measurement that's really only used in Final Fantasy XIV. I'm sure that in other MMORPGs that they have other terms that they use. Here it's potency, somewhere else it may be skill damage or spell damage or something of that nature. But this just lets us know that this skill has a base damage potential of 150. It's always going to be 150. It's not going to change unless we somehow find a way to augment that. But generally it's always going to stay the same. Underneath that you can see that there are some added descriptions. We have Opal form bonus, which is something that we haven't gotten into. That's very pugilist specific, but pugilists basically have different forms that they rotate through. There are 3 that I know of. There may be more now, but there are 3. And you can see that it says Opal form basic bonus. It says critical damage is dealt from behind the target. So that's something that we want to know. If we have the Opal form or in Opal form, if we deal damage from behind, if we use this ability Boot Shine from behind the target, we'll be guaranteed a critical hit. And we'll talk about damage types here in a second, but that's definitely something we want to know. Underneath that it says additional effects. It says changes form to Raptor. So there we go. There's one thing. So we can see that by using this ability, we're given an effect called Raptor form. And we can see underneath that it gives us a duration for that effect. It says 10 seconds. So that means that by using this ability, we'll gain the effect Raptor, and that effect is going to will last for 10 seconds. Underneath that, you'll see that it says acquired, and it has the symbol for the pugilist, and it says level 1. So that just lets us know when we acquired this ability, on what class we acquired it on. And then underneath that, you'll see that it says affinity, and it says PGL, which is the abbreviation for pugilist, and it says MNK, which is the abbreviation for monk. And that just lets us know which classes can use this ability. In other MMOs, you're generally not going to have to worry about that. Generally in MMOs, when you create a character, you pick the class that they are, and they are that class. And so you don't have to worry about abilities from other or anything like that. You won't have access to those. In Final Fantasy XIV, it's a little bit different. Here, one character can be any class in the game, and that includes battle classes, crafting classes, and gathering classes. And as you level, you'll gain abilities that you'll be able to move over or use on other classes. So you may, we're a pugilist, we may be level 20 pugilist, and we may have, messed around and leveled our Lancer a little bit. Well, when we switch back over to pugilist after leveling our Lancer, we may find that we have an ability from Lancer that we can pull over if we want to and use on our pugilist. So those abilities, that down there, the affinities, is going to let you know whether or not you can use on other classes. But we can see here that no, this is only a pugilist or monk ability. So let's move over to the next ability that we have here. We are currently level 5, so we've got 2 attack skills. You can see here that this ability is called True Strike, and that it's a weapon skill. It has the same range as Boot Shine, so it's got a range of 3. It doesn't have a radius, so that means it only affects the target. You can see it's a cast time of instant, just like Boot Shine. It has a recast time of 2.5 seconds, which means after using it, we'll have to wait 2.5 seconds before we can use it again. And then you see that it has a TP cost of 50. So it's a little bit lower than Boot Shine, which is nice for sure. And then we'll go on to the item description. So this says it delivers an attack with a potency of 150. So it has the same damage potential as Boot Shine. But let's see, after that it says 190 when executed from behind the target. So just kind of like the Opal form bonus for Boot Shine, if we use this ability from behind the target at any point, it will actually do, it'll actually have a higher damage potential. Has a damage potential of 190, which is pretty good. So that just lets us know, hey, whenever we can use True Strike behind a target, we're going to want to do that. So anytime we have the opportunity to do that, we're definitely going to want to do that. And then under that it says can only be used when in Opal or when in Raptor form. So that's a condition, and sometimes there are going to be those. That's why reading the tooltips is always really good, because it'll let you know, things like that, just when you can use an ability, how you can use an ability, what to use the ability for. So if you may find a condition that says, you can only use Shield Bash if you have a shield, which in other MMOs, in one MMO you may be able to use Shield Bash if you don't have a shield, and in another MMO you may not be able to unless you have a shield. But the only way to know that is, through reading the tooltip. So you see that it says can only be used when in a Raptor form, which is cool, because we just found out that Boot Shine actually changes us into the Raptor form. So that's pretty cool. So now we know, okay, so we'll use Boot Shine first, and then after that we can use True Strike. Now here's where it gets a little interesting, right? We could just use Boot Shine if we wanted to all the time. So why would we use True Strike? Well, there's 2 reasons. One, if we can hit the target from behind, we're going to want to use True Strike over Boot Shine, because True Strike has a higher potency, and that's all potency is about, is how much damage this ability has the potential. So it has a higher potential to do damage. And then the other thing is that it costs less TP. So even if we can't hit a target from behind, it still costs less resources than Boot Shine does. So anytime, we definitely should. For right now, that's probably going to change. Underneath that, you can see that it says change form to core. We got a little ninja guy going in. He just wiped those dudes out. Alright, anyway, sorry. It says additional effect changes form to coral. So hey, there's another form we found. We don't have an ability so far that requires coral form, but we have one now that we see. We have an ability we see that'll change us into another form. And underneath that we see that the duration. So the coral form, the coral effect will last for 10 seconds. And then underneath that we see acquired, and we see the pugilist icon that says level 2. So that just lets us know at level 2 we acquired this ability on pugilist. And then affinity, underneath that again we see a pugilist monk. So it's only a pugilist and a monk ability. Again, these are things you generally aren't. The affinity thing is generally something you're not going to have to worry about. If you're really, in Final Fantasy XIV at least, you'll see here that we have additional, and what will happen here is if there are abilities that you can use from another class that you have, the icon for that class will be lit up, and the abilities, only the abilities that you can use will appear in the box there. So generally you're not going to have to worry about that too much. You'll be able to see immediately which ones you can use and which ones you can't. But at least, reading the tooltip, now we know, hey, this is what these do, and this is how these work, and cool. And I know that now. I know that Boot Shine's cool, you know what I mean? But I definitely like True Strike. Definitely want to use True Strike when I can. And so we don't have an ability that gives us Opa form, but when we get one, we're definitely going to want to try and use True Strike from behind as well. So let's talk about our third ability that we have here, which is generally the second type of ability that you're going to have. These are self defensive abilities or self abilities, self buffs, things like that. They're also called. This one here we see is called Featherfoot, and it's an ability, so it's not a weapon skill. It's just something that we use innately in our class. You can see to the right of that it has a range of 0 yards, so that means it's only going to affect us, or that it's going to target us. And then if it has 0 yards, if it has no range, it's definitely going to affect us for sure. And then we see that it has a radius of 0 yards, so it's only going to affect us. It doesn't have an effect outside of our character. It doesn't have an area that it affects anything around us. You can see that the cast time is instant, so it'll be an instant cast just like our other abilities. As soon as we push the button, it's going to go off. And then we have a recast time of 90 seconds. So that means that after we use this ability, we're going to have to wait a whole minute and 30 seconds in order to be able to use this. So that's definitely good information to know as well. And let's see, underneath that it's going to give us a description for the ability. It says increases evasion by 12%. So that's cool. That means that it's going to increase our ability to dodge incoming attacks by 12%. So if we're in a sticky situation, or if if we're in a sticky situation, or we know that the enemy we're about to attack is a little powerful, we might just want to go ahead and pop this, and that'll hopefully mitigate some damage for us, so hopefully we can survive the fight a little bit better. You can see that it has a duration of 15 seconds, so that means that the effect lasts for 15 seconds. So after we push this ability for the next 15 seconds, our evasion will be increased by 12%, which is pretty nice. And then it says acquired, and it has the icon for Pugilist, and it says level 4, so that means at level 4 on the Pugilist class, we gain this ability. Then we see underneath it that it says affinity, and this is a little bit of what we were talking about. You can see that it has Gladiator, Pugilist, Marauder, Lancer, Archer, Rogue, Conjurer, Thaumaturge, Arcanist, Monk, Warrior, Dragoon, Bard, and Ninja. All those classes have the ability to use this. So now that we have this ability, if we do decide to level up any of those other classes, once they get to a point where they can use abilities, they can pull this over too, which is definitely nice, especially when you're leveling to have defensive abilities and things like that you can use. So that's really about it for the types of ability. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about damage types. There's really only 2 damage types. You're going to have your normal damage, your normal hits, and then you'll have, well actually I won't say that, we'll say there's going to be 3 different types. There are 3 different damage types. You'll have normal hits, and those are just going to be just regular old damage, just solid numbers. You'll have critical hits, which critical hits are usually your base damage or your normal hits, but with a bonus on it, and it's usually significant. So getting critical hits is always definitely good. The third type of damage is what we call a dot, or a damage over time, and what that is it's something that you affect onto an enemy, and then for a specific point of time it will deal damage. It will deal a specific amount of damage per second, and those are a lot of fun, because with those you can just set if you have a couple of them, you can set 3 of them on an enemy and then go do your thing and set 3 on another enemy, and then come back and check on this guy and maybe refresh one. But dots are definitely important too. They usually don't have a very high damage potential on the actual attack, but the damage potential over time is generally pretty decent. And on top of that, it's just one ability that you use. It's going to continue to do damage while you do other things. So they're usually really good, usually pretty good to use. But let's go ahead and attack this guy, and we'll talk about something else. So as we talked about, boot shine is going to be the first one that we can use. So we go ahead and use boot shine. You can see that we got the effect for raptor form, and you can see that it's ticking down too. So it's letting us know this is how much longer you have this effect for. If we use it again, you can see that now True Strike, the icon is lit, whereas it was gray, and it has this orange ring going around it. It lets us know that it's the next, in Final Fantasy XIV at least, that it's the next move in a chain of moves, or in a chain of abilities. So that just kind of guides you through, and lets you know, hey, this is a good one to use next, or this is the next move in that chain, or one of the next moves in that chain. But another thing that we can see here is that when I use this ability, you can see that a black film pans around the ability. Let's go ahead and use that. And what that is that's what we call a cooldown timer, or in this case, a global cooldown timer. You can see that when I use this ability, actually True Strike as well gets a black pan, or gets a cooldown. So that just lets us know that both of these abilities are actually on the same cooldown. And hey, what just happened? We just got a level. We just got a level. So, and we got a new ability. And Snap Punch. We'll talk about that here in a second. But that pan just lets us know that we can't use that ability. That's our recast timer right there in visual representation. And it just lets us know that we can't use this ability until that pan is done. But as you saw, actually, True Strike is on the same timer. So this is what we call a global cooldown, and that means that all these abilities are tied to the same use. So when I use Boot Shine, I'll have to wait to use True Strike as well. And when I use True Strike, I'll have to wait to use Boot Shine or our new ability Snap Punch. But one thing that you can see is that Feather Foot is not on the global cooldown. So that means we can use this at any point in time when we're attacking. So that's always nice to know. And we call these off GCD, or off global cooldown, which means it's something that you can use at any point in time in the combat. This specifically is a defensive defensive cooldown, which people usually shorten to just a CD. Because it's easier to call out. Generally, you won't have to call out for offensive cooldown abilities. Usually people use those on their own. But in any case, so that's the different types of timers that you'll have, or countdowns you'll have, cast times you'll have, recast times you'll have on your abilities. So let's look at this new ability here. This new ability we got is called Snap Punch. We can see that it's a weapon skill, so it's a skill that we use with our weapons. And we can see that it has a range of 3 yards, which is the same as Boot Shine and True Strike. So it's definitely going to be that same range. We see that it has a radius of 0 yards, so that means it's only going to affect the target. It doesn't affect anything around it. We can see that it has a cast time of instant, so it'll cast instantly as soon as we push the button. And that has a recast time of 2.5 seconds, just the same as our other abilities, Boot Shine and True Strike. And you can see that it has a TP cost of 50, so again, another one that's lower than Boot Shine. And underneath that, we can see that it says delivers an attack with a potency of 140. Uh-oh, what's that about? That's lower than both Boot Shine and True Strike. And then it says 180 when executed from a target's flank. So that means if we're on the side, we have a higher damage potential with this than we do if we're standing in front of it. But it also means that we have a higher damage potential than Boot Shine or True Strike if we're standing in front of it. So let's continue reading. It says can only be used when in coral form. So that means we have to have coral forms. So that means in order to be able to use this, we have to gain the benefit from True Strike, which is coral form, or the effect, which is coral form. And in order to use True Strike, we have to gain the effect from Boot Shine, which is Raptor. So that just kind of lets us know and guides us through the process of using the abilities in the right order. Underneath that, you see that it says additional effect, changes form to Opal Opal. So there's Opal Opal, which we were looking for earlier on Boot Shine. So now we know that in order to get Opal Opal effect, so we can get that critical hit from behind the target, we have to use Snap Punch. So once we use Snap Punch, we'll want to follow up with Boot Shine, and if we can follow up with Boot Shine from behind the target, we definitely want to do that. Underneath that, you can see that it says duration 10 seconds, so that lets us know how long the Opal Opal form bonus will last. And then underneath that, we've got some new stuff. We've got some extra stuff here. So we've got another additional effect. It says grants Greased Lightning, and it says duration 14 seconds. And then we won't worry about what's in the parentheses over there, because that's for a later date. And it says so we know that the new effect Greased Lightning has a duration of 14 seconds. And then we have under that Greased Lightning bonus. So this is going to let us know what Greased Lightning does. It increases damage dealt by 10% and attack speed by 5%. So that lets us know that when we use Snap Punch, we'll gain both Opal Opal form and Greased Lightning. Greased Lightning is going to make us do more damage overall, and is also going to make us attack faster, which is super awesome. So anytime we have the chance to use that, we definitely can. But it also lets us know that we'll have Greased Lightning for 14 seconds, and we'll start getting into that kind of stuff when we talk about rotations and things like that, advanced rotations. But for right now, let's just try out our new combo here. So we go activated to True Strike, and now we can use Snap Punch, and there we go. And we went from Raptor to Coral, and then to Opal Opal, and we get it on back to Boot Shine, and we gained Greased Lightning. And so all that just kind of comes together, and as you go, you'll figure out when it is best to use abilities and things like that. And if you have any questions, there's tons of resources online. We're going to be doing those here. We're going to go through each class at 3 different stages. We're going to talk about just beginner rotations, and then we're going to talk about mid-level adept rotations, and then we're going to talk about advanced rotations for each of the classes, and different strategies and things like that. But that's really it for combat. As far as this goes, I will do a quick video on casters, because they're a little bit different. But for right now, that's really it. Just selecting targets, reading your abilities and knowing what they do, and trying to figure out when to use them. And then again, if you have any questions or anything like that, there's tons of resources out there. There's plenty of videos, tons of videos, and tons of forums on Reddit, or tons of forums, and then there's Reddit and things like that, and resources online that can give you just basic rundowns for your classes for pretty much any MMORPG you're gonna play. But that's really about it. So for combat, that's gonna be it. Our next video is going to be on basic rotations, so we'll go into rotation a little bit more in depth, basically what rotation means, not necessarily how to do them. And then our video after that, we might go through some dungeons, so we'll see. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, any advice, anything like that, let us know how we're doing. You can leave a comment in the video, or send us an email at ffxivandthingsmailbox@gmail.com. And definitely, if you have any ideas or anything that you'd like to see, send us an email and we'll get to it for sure, because we love doing this stuff. So you guys enjoy. Say goodbye, Sig. Bye, Sig. And we'll see you guys later.